No sensible reader of the news could look at America and think it is flourishing. Massive economic inequality and the breakdown of family formation have eroded the foundations of society. Once beautiful cities and towns around the nation have succumbed to an ugly blight. Cratering rates of childbirth, rising numbers of deaths of despair, widespread addictions to pharmaceuticals and electronic distractions testify to the prevalence of a dull ennui and psychic despair. The older generation has betrayed the younger by saddling it with unconscionable levels of debt. Warnings about both oligarchy and mob rule appear daily on the front pages of newspapers throughout the country, as well as throughout the West. A growing chorus of voices reflects on the likelihood and even desirability of civil war, while others openly call for the imposition of raw power by one class to suppress the political ambitions of its opponent class. Unsurprisingly, the louder the calls for tyranny, the more likely the eruption of a civil war, and the more likely a civil war moves from cold to hot, the more likely it is ultimately resolved through one or another form of tyranny. What we are witnessing in America is a regime that is exhausted. Liberalism has not only failed, as I argued in my last book, but its dual embrace of economic and social progress has generated a particularly virulent form of that ancient divide that pits the few against the many. How to reconcile the few and the many is one of the oldest questions of the Western philosophical tradition. The answer devised by authors as various as Aristotle, Cicero, Polybius, Aquinas, Machiavelli, and Alexis de Tocqueville was the idea of the mixed regime, a mixing of the two classes. By this telling, the aim was a kind of balance and equilibrium between the two classes, and the good political order was one that achieved a kind of stability and continuity over a long period of time and secured the common good, the widespread prospect for human flourishing regardless of one's class status. The classical solution was rejected by the architects of liberalism, who believed that this seemingly permanent political divide could be solved by advances in a new science of politics. Rather than seeking a mixed regime, instead it was believed that a regime governed by a new commitment could overcome the divide, the priority of progress. The first liberals, classical liberals, believed especially that economic progress through an ever freer and more expansive market could fuel a transformative social and political order in which growing prosperity would always outstrip economic discontents. Far from seeking stability, balance, and order, the aim was the unceasing instability of an economy that has fittingly been described as a constant process of creative destruction. It was held as an article of faith that the inequality and resulting discontents generated by the new capitalist economic system would be compensated by a rising tide of prosperity. Later liberals, progressives, decried the resulting economic inequality, but retained the belief that progress would eventually give rise to the reconciliation of the classes. While they called for greater economic equality, they also demanded dynamism in the social order in order to displace not now the remnants of the old aristocracy, but the instinctual conservatism of the commoners. This imperative has been especially pursued through transformations wrought in the social sphere and has in recent years culminated in the sexual revolution and its attendant effort to displace traditional forms of marriage, family, and sexual identity based in nature, replaced instead by a social and technological project that would liberate humans from mere nature. Progressive liberalism has held that through the overcoming of all forms of parochial and traditional belief and practice, ancient divisions and limits could be overcome and instead be replaced by a universalized empathy. With the advance of progress, the old divisions, once based in class but increasingly defined in the terms of sexual identity, would wither away and give rise to the birth of a new humanity.